They say the house burned down decades ago, but every night when the wind crawls through Fayette County, people still hear the screams, echoing from an empty field. No one ever found the missing family, and no one who stayed there made it past the third night. Tonight, we return to the place that refuses to die. Story 1. It stood deep in the woods, where the dirt road turned to gravel, and the gravel to mud. A lonely farmhouse surrounded by dying trees. The locals never went near after sunset. Even the animals avoided that patch of land. Birds would stop chirping as if the air itself refused to carry sound. Back in the 1930s, the house was owned by the Carter family. A husband, wife, and their 2 young children. They were poor but hard-working people, trying to survive off the land. They lived quietly, far from town, but one night, everything changed. Neighbors later said they heard screams echoing across the valley. Long, drawn-out, blood-curdling cries that didn't sound quite human. When a farmer went to check the next morning, the house stood silent. No one answered the door. Inside, the kitchen table was set for dinner, plates untouched, candles melted down to wax puddles. The beds were empty. The family was gone. No one ever found them. The sheriff at the time dismissed it as a runaway case, said maybe the Carters packed up and left. But the sheriff's deputy claimed something else, that he saw muddy footprints leading out the back door and into the woods. But no footprints coming back. After that, no one wanted the property. It sat abandoned for years. The windows broke, the roof began to sag, and vines crawled up the porch like fingers reclaiming the land. But the screams, they never stopped. People said you could hear them from miles away, especially when the fog rolled in thick over the fields. Sometimes it was a woman's scream, sometimes a man's, sometimes a child crying for help. In 1952, a traveling salesman named Walter Briggs stopped at a gas station near Fayette County. Locals warned him not to take the old road through the woods after dark, but Walter was in a hurry. That night, his car broke down right in front of the abandoned Carter place. He knocked on the door out of desperation. The door creaked open by itself. Inside, the house smelled of rot and damp wood. He claimed later that he saw the faint glow of a candle burning in the kitchen, even though the air was thick with dust. He sat there waiting for help, but soon heard a low sobbing, like a child crying from beneath the floorboards. He called out, but the sound stopped instantly. When he stood to leave, the front door slammed shut on its own. He said he ran toward the window, only to see his reflection staring back. But the reflection was smiling, while he wasn't. When police found his car the next morning, the driver's door was open, keys still in the ignition. Walter was found walking down the road barefoot, his clothes torn, his face pale as chalk. He never went near the woods again. By the 1960s, the place had gained a name among locals: the Screaming House. Teenagers would dare each other to go inside. Some claimed they saw faces pressed against the upstairs windows. Others said they heard laughter coming from the well out back. One hunter, in 1971, told a chilling story to the local newspaper. He said he was tracking deer through the woods when he heard a faint humming sound. It grew louder until it turned into what he described as a woman screaming underwater. When he followed the sound, he found himself standing over the old well. The cover had rotted away. He looked down and saw ripples in the dark water below, as if something had just moved. Then, clear as day, a voice whispered, "He's watching you." He never hunted there again. People who dared to spend the night didn't last long. A group of college students from Charleston tried it once, filming their ghost adventure in 1978. They pitched sleeping bags in the front room. The footage, what little survived, shows them laughing, joking, calling out to the spirits. But halfway through the night, the tone changes. The camera shakes, the audio fills with shrieks, and one of the students screams, "It's in the hall." The camera falls sideways. When police found the house the next morning, the students were gone. All except for one, who was found outside in the field, still alive but in shock, repeating the same words. The voices are under the ground. The footage was confiscated, reportedly lost. Then came the fire. In 1983, a passerby saw smoke rising through the trees. The old Carter farmhouse burned to the ground. No one claimed responsibility. No one even tried to put it out. The flames turned the sky red for miles. When it was over, only the stone chimney and the old well remained. Some said it was God's way of cleansing the place. Others said the fire was the house itself, screaming one last time. But the story didn't end there. Even after the ruins cooled, people still heard screams echoing across the valley. Farmers claimed their cows would panic near the site. Hikers said their flashlights would flicker and die as they passed through. Some saw shadowy figures standing in the mist, watching silently. In 1997, a couple hiking through the area decided to camp near the old foundation. Around midnight, they woke to footsteps circling their tent. They thought it was an animal, but then came a sound like someone whispering their names from just outside the fabric. When they unzipped the tent, there was no one there. Only a trail of wet, muddy footprints leading toward the field. The woman claimed she saw a figure at the edge of the woods, pale and motionless, staring back. They packed up and ran through the night, barefoot and terrified. Locals still talk about that night. They say the screams have grown fainter over the years. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, you can still hear them. Long and distant, like echoes trapped between the trees. And every few years, someone new moves into the area, builds a house a little too close to where the old one stood. And every time, the same thing happens. Strange noises, flickering lights, windows found open in the morning. Dogs bark at empty doorways. In 2019, a young couple built a small cabin there, thinking the stories were just folklore. The woman started hearing tapping sounds at 3 a.m., always from the same corner of the room. One night, she woke to the sound of sobbing right beside her bed. When she turned on the light, muddy footprints led from the door straight to her side of the bed and stopped. The next day, they left everything behind and never returned. Now nothing stands there but grass and weeds. The chimney collapsed long ago. The well has been sealed with concrete. But even now, truck drivers on the nearby road say they sometimes see a flickering light through the trees, like a lantern swinging slowly back and forth. And if you stop your engine and listen very carefully, they say you can still hear it. Faint cries, echoing through the dark hills of Fayette County. Some swear it's the Carter family, forever trapped in their final moments. Others believe it's something older, something that feeds on fear and memory, bound to the place where it was first heard. Whatever it is, the locals know one thing for certain. No one who's ever gone looking for the screaming house has come back the same. Story 2. Deep within the endless mist of the Appalachian Mountains, where the wind hums through hollow trees and the moonlight barely touches the ground, there stands an old farmhouse. Abandoned, crooked, and soaked in decades of terror. Locals whisper its name like a curse. They say once you enter, the house remembers you, and it never lets you go. For 3 generations, one family called this place home. They lived, loved, and suffered inside its creaking wooden walls. Walls that still breathe, still whisper, and still echo with the laughter of unseen children. It all began in the late 1800s, when a man named Samuel Wren moved his family deep into the mountains, away from towns and noise. He built the house with his own hands, a proud, sturdy farmhouse on a clearing surrounded by forest. But locals warned him not to build there. That land, they said, belonged to the dead. The place where he hammered his first nail had once been a burial site for miners who never made it out of the earth alive. Samuel laughed it off. But the mountains never forget. The Wrens lived there for decades. Each generation inherited the house, and with it, the curse. The current owner, a woman in her 40s, shared her family's story with trembling hands. She said it began subtly, doors closing on their own, footsteps pacing in empty rooms, whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At first, they thought it was just an old house settling. But the night the laughter began, everything changed. It was her daughter who heard it first. Giggles echoing from the attic, soft and playful, like a child hiding behind the beams. But there were no children in the attic. No one ever went up there after dark. The family ignored it, trying to rationalize, but soon the laughter grew louder, clearer, closer. One night, the woman decided to investigate. She climbed the narrow staircase to the attic with a flashlight trembling in her hand. The air was freezing. Dust floated in the beam of light like ash. And then, a small ball rolled toward her feet from the shadows. She froze. When she bent down to pick it up, she heard a voice. A tiny voice, whisper right behind her ear. "Don't take my toy." She dropped the flashlight. When it hit the ground, she saw something move. A pale figure of a child standing by the old rocking chair. But as soon as she blinked, it was gone. From that night on, the house felt alive. Doors slammed without wind. Cold spots appeared out of nowhere. The family dog refused to enter the hallway that led to the attic. Sometimes they'd wake up to find every chair in the kitchen turned upside down. When they brought in a psychic, the woman could barely step through the door before she turned pale. She said the attic was thick with something not human. She described an evil presence, an ancient energy, buried deep in the wood and soil beneath the house. The psychic said there was a child spirit, yes, but something darker was feeding off it. Something that had been there long before the Wrens ever moved in. She refused to stay the night. Over the years, the haunting grew stronger. The woman's grandmother once found muddy footprints leading from the back door to her bedroom. Small, child-sized footprints. But there had been no rain for days. No mud anywhere near the house. The knocking began next. Every night at 3 a.m., 3 slow, deliberate knocks from the attic ceiling. No matter where they slept, the sound followed them. Tap, 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 as if something inside the walls was waiting to be let out. The family tried everything. They moved furniture out, burned sage, prayed, even boarded up the attic door. But nothing stopped it. The house didn't want to be silenced. Neighbors kept their distance. They said they could see lights flickering in the windows late at night, even when no one was home. A few dared to visit in daylight, but each one described feeling dizzy, heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on them. One man, a hunter, once wandered too close to the property at night. He claimed he heard children laughing in the trees, followed by a woman's voice whispering his name. When he looked back, there was no one there. But his flashlight flickered. And when it turned back on, he saw a handprint on the inside of his car window. Small, wet, and smeared with mud. He never returned to that road again. Even now, decades later, the woman says the haunting hasn't stopped. She no longer sleeps in the house, just visits to check the property. But each time she steps onto the porch, she feels the same thing. That she's being watched. That someone or something is still up there, in the attic, waiting. Locals who pass by the road claim they still see flickers of light in the windows. Some say they hear faint laughter drifting from the trees when the wind blows just right. And sometimes, they hear knocking. Those who believe in the paranormal think the house is a conduit. A gateway where time, death, and memory bleed together. The child spirit, they say, was never buried. It wanders still, tethered to the soil of the Appalachians, bound by something much older. And maybe that's why the psychic said the house couldn't be cleansed, because the evil there wasn't inside the walls. It was the land itself. The mountains have secrets older than any map, older than any man. The woman once recorded the attic at night, just to prove to herself it was real. When she played it back the next morning, the sound nearly made her drop her phone. Faint, overlapping voices whispering over each other, and beneath them, a sound like breathing. She deleted the recording that same day. Now the house stands alone. Half-collapsed roof. Windows cracked. Wind howling through the empty halls like a scream that never ends. Hikers who find it by accident say it feels like stepping into a nightmare. The air turns heavy, cold, wrong. Some report shadows moving even when the sun is out. A few people online claim they've seen the ghost child themselves. A small boy, pale and barefoot, standing by the edge of the forest. He never moves, never waves, just watches until you blink. And then he's gone. No one dares go near the attic anymore. The door is swollen shut with rot, but if you listen closely, you can still hear the sound. Tap, tap, tap. And when night falls and fog rolls down from the mountains, locals say the farmhouse almost looks alive again. Lights flickering, faint laughter echoing through the valley. Somewhere in that attic, something still waits. Maybe the child. Maybe something that's been there since before the wrens ever came. But one thing's for sure. In the heart of the Appalachians, where the forest never forgets and the land remembers every drop of blood spilled upon it, the haunted farm still breathes. And those who listen closely on stormy nights swear they can still hear the knocking. Tap, tap, tap. Because some homes don't die, they just wait for you to come back.